Hey everybody, this is Bob Mintzer. Live in Los Angeles. I'm a saxophonist, composer, arranger, big band leader, member of the Yellow Jackets for 31 years. And you are watching me on Jazz Across the Pond with the Jazz Cat and Mr. G. Sure hope you enjoy it.
Well, I Want to Be Happy. That's the title of the track. I Want to Be Happy from the wonderful album Only in New York from 1994. And I'll tell you something, it's not only I want to be happy, I think everybody wants to be happy. I know Mr. G is very, very happy about this because we've got an outstanding guest with us tonight. And I know our followers just can't wait for this interview. What can I say about this week's very, very special guest? Our special guest is a saxophonist, arranger, educator who resides in Los Angeles, California. He currently holds the Barbera and the Buzz McCoy Endowed Chair at the USC Thornton School of Music. Our guest is a 31-year member of the fabulous Yellow Jackets. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join the two of us and join everybody here as we extend a very, very warm welcome to the man himself, Mr. Bob Mintzer. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to
What
you guys
can we
and
say?
everybody out there.
Good stuff,
Thank you
Bob.
so much for taking time to come and join us, and that it really is
Absolutely.
a great pleasure. Right, okay, let's crack on with this then. So let's find out what we can about this wonderful man. So what do we know about our special guest, Bob Mintzer? Well, he's a saxophonist, he's a woodwind specialist, composer, arranger, educator, born in New York. He formed a connection to the music at a very, very early age, primarily through playing piano by ear, later moving on to the guitar, clarinet, drums, and eventually the saxophone, which he's renowned for. Both playing clarinet and later saxophone in school band programs, then playing guitar and keys in a garage bands through his high schools. Bob, would you please tell our followers more about this amazing childhood and your introduction to music and then eventually into jazz itself, please, sir?
Sure. Well, I like to say music chose me. I didn't choose it. I think my brain was wired in such a way where any musical sound would sort of draw me to it. And I enjoyed hearing it, but I also wanted very much to understand what it was and try to emulate it on one instrument or another. You know, I think my goal from a very early age was to play every instrument and just try to figure out all I could about music. So that became my passion at a very early age. And I think that in conjunction with the fact that I was somewhat, you know, kind of quiet, bashful kid, I found a lot of solace and serenity in this, you know, world of music, and just could sort of dive in and stay there for long periods of time.
So were your parents musical at all?
No, not particularly. I mean, they liked music. They listened. I had a grandmother who played piano by ear. I would say that would be probably the most significant musical influence in terms of genetics. But no one in my family was a musician, really, professional or amateur, except for my grandmother.
So who introduced you to the saxophone then?
Oh gosh, how did that happen? Well, I think if you go back to third grade, you know, they in elementary school in the U.S. at that time, there were band programs. We're talking now like in the early 60s. And they passed out little index cards and they asked you to write down the instrument you wanted to play. Of course, they were talking about band and orchestra instruments.
Right.
I was, you know, I was very taken with the guitar and, you know, playing blues and rock and roll. And so I wrote down guitar, and the guy went, guitar?
No.
So he crossed that out and said, well, we have an overabundance of clarinet. So he wrote down clarinet, and I wound up, you know, being given a clarinet, and I learned how to play the clarinet. You know, and inevitably, I guess in middle school, a few years later, I was handed a saxophone because, you know, they needed somebody to play saxophone in the stage band, as it was called back then, or, you know, a jazz band, big band, whatever you want to call it. So,
Well, Bob, like yourself, you know, I had a fascination with music at a very early age as well. Surprisingly enough, I would watch cartoons, especially Warner Brothers and Looney Tunes, because I was enthralled with the classical music. I mean, they played the great. Yeah. Remember all of that? I mean, they played all the great.
Do I ever? Yeah, those were those were virtuosic scores. They were really something.
They were phenomenal. I mean, you know, Stravinsky, I mean, I'm talking top-notch recordings, but I, like yourself, I can remember around third grade, I think they called it the flutophone or something like that. And I knew that there was some curiosity who had any kind of inclination toward music. But I started off in clarinet in sixth grade. I was classically trained in clarinet. And then my junior year in high school, I switched to bassoon. And you talk about messing with your head. For me, going from treble clef to bass clef was a major mind screw up for me.
Yeah, just not to mention the complexities of playing a bassoon. But you bring up an interesting point, which was in the 60s, there was the music on television was very rich and deep. And, you know, I mean, that was my main exposure to music, you know, just watching television shows, the theme songs, movie soundtracks, like you say, cartoons. There was amazing, amazing music on television at that time.
Well, I used to walk around going, da, 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 da. I had no idea what I was doing, but I heard it like Bugs Bunny or something crazy, you know. Well, Bob, from a developmental standpoint, 1969 proved to be a pivotal year for you in your life as you received a scholarship to attend the Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan. At Interlochen, you developed a work ethic that has served you well, given the many hats you wear as a multi-instrumentalist, performer, composer, arranger, producer, and educator. But the Academy is also where you met drummer Peter Erskine, a longtime colleague. For our viewers, Peter performed with Stan Kenton, Maynard Ferguson, Weather Report, Steps Ahead, Chicoria, and the Yellow Jackets, just to mention a few, but more about Peter in a moment. You continue your studies at the Hart School of Music from 1970 through 72, then the Manhattan School of Music from 72 through 74. As we've mentioned, you were a clarinet major in both institutions while teaching yourself jazz. And it seems to me you got together with a couple of musicians outside of school and did a little bit of jamming. But what's amazing though, Bob, is the number of times we've heard other artists talk about musicians who have been lifelong friends. Jason Miles shared with us that he grew up with Bob Berg. He kept calling him Little Bobby Berg. And A. Ray Fuller told us that Pop Staples gave him his first guitar. So if you would share with our viewers a little bit about your lifelong colleague, Mr. Peter Erskine.
Well, Peter...
We've only got 40 minutes.
Yeah, right. You know, as you say, I met Peter at Interlochen Arts Academy. He was 14, I was 16. And he was already playing like a consummate professional. We played together in a big band there at school. And immediately became friends, and we also started a little trio. He and a pianist named Jim Cathcart, now Carter Cathcart, who went on to do all kinds of things. And I had a trio, and in that trio, I would play upright bass, and then sometimes the pianist would play bass, and I would play piano. So I think we played almost every day for a period of time. It was just a great time, you know, to experiment and try things. And, you know, Peter is remarkable, always was. I mean, he started very, very young. I think his dad was taking him to Stan Kenton camps when he was 10 or 11. I think Stan Kenton wanted him to go on the road when he was 11 or something crazy. But that's crazy. So we then, you know, we left Interlochen and sort of had these parallel careers where Peter was on the Stan Kenton band, I was on the Buddy Rich band. Peter went to Maynard Ferguson, I went to the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Big Band. Peter went to Weather Report. I played with a lot of different people around New York. Then we convened in the Jaco Pastorius band.
Yep, word of mouth.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, all the while playing on each other's recording projects as well. I mean, Peter played on many of my big band records, and then the Yellow Jackets. Of course, Peter played with that band for a year in around 2000, and finally we've come back together again at the University of Southern California Thornton School of Music. So we've been sort of, we've been on these two roads that are, traversing right next to one another for 50 years.
Yeah, but he had an inside advantage when he knows the guy that sits in the big chair there in the jazz school of music. So, but what a great way for you guys to start off together, and then both of you are educators at the same university. That's mind blowing. That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Well, in 1974, we've just alluded to it there, but 1974, upon finishing your year at MCM, you joined the Puerto Orchestra, the Tito Puerto Orchestra.
Puente.
Sorry.
Tito
Puente.
Simultaneously did some touring with the wonderful Deodatas. Then, in 1975, as we've just spoken about, you then had the opportunity to join the Buddy Rich Big Band. An opportunity that you toured, you went round and you did 2 years, traveling every night, seeing the world, getting paid for it, and working with such a man as Buddy Rich. Now, what an incredible few years for yourself, from Deodata to Buddy Rich. I was fortunate enough, I saw Buddy Rich live in the United Kingdom twice in the early 1980s. And I was mesmerized and spellbound at how tight he kept his band. I mean, when it was his drum solo, all the instruments, whether it was out of respect or because he dictated it, but they all put their instruments down and turned their chairs and watched him while he did his solo and that. And of course, there's the famous YouTube clip of him having a massive rant at the end of a tour to the entire musicians and threatening that he'd replace the whole lot of them and that. So he was a tyrant. But what did you learn from working with the great man himself, Buddy Rich, and you've carried forward to yourself now today?
Well, I mean, one of the major things I learned was how to play the saxophone. I mean, the way we learn and progress is by playing, as much as we possibly can. And when I joined that band, I was one of the younger people there. So I was learning from people older and more experienced than myself. And of course, Buddy was a phenomenal drummer, a great musician. And there was so much to learn from playing with him. And the other important thing I learned was, well, many things, but I had the opportunity to write my first 6 or 7 big band arrangements for him. Wow. And cool. The first 3 or 4 of them, we were playing every night. So it was a real study in, what to write, what not to write, how to write for somebody, how to include my playing in a composition and an arrangement. So that was an amazing golden opportunity. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the thing I learned was, how to be a professional artist, how to carry myself, how to, be on time, how to be prepared, how to play consistently, how to present yourself, all those things. Made a lot of mistakes, but, I learned by paying attention and watching the people around me. And it was invaluable experience.
That's amazing.
There's a film my son got me into a few years ago called Whiplash, and I think it was based on Buddy Rich, and it was the most amazing film about this youngster who was playing drums and the tutor just laid into him. So eventually, as he had blood running in his hands playing the drum, he went again and again and it was an amazing. If you ever get a chance to watch Whiplash, it's an amazing film about.
So a little anecdote on Whiplash: the guy who was the band director is my high school girlfriend's cousin. And it's weird because they look very much alike, but it was a very controversial film. I think a lot of jazz educators were sort of incensed that it portrayed jazz education in a really horrible light. I mean, I don't know too many teachers I know some teachers that are very strict and stern, right, but not vicious and malicious quite like that. I mean, that took it to the nth degree,
Yeah, they may be demanding, but they just want to push you to the next level. I mean, that's what a good instructor does anyway. Yeah,
there's a way to do that where you're not
intimidating,
not tearing somebody apart. You're
right,
exactly them up.
Right, exactly.
But saying, look, you have to do this. You could work a little harder by doing this, right, not like, you're a piece of crap,
Yeah.
That doesn't help anything or anybody.
Not at all.
Kevin,
well, Bob, the list of artists that you've worked with has been mind-blowing. If you would, and I know you like a challenge, let's do a little word association with, a couple of words, maybe a phrase. And I'm going to throw a couple of artists that you've worked with. I just want to see how you react. Are you game?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm here.
first one.
Fire away.
David Sanborn.
Great musician, trendsetter. It was interesting with Dave. So many people imitated him that at one point he felt like he was being a caricature of himself.
Oh, wow.
Because everybody tried to sound like him on the alto. As similar thing with Mike Brecker. But he played lead alto in my first big band, and that was really something to hear. He had this very commanding, rich sound, and great musician.
All right, let's try Lyle Mays.
Another great musician, great composer, pianist, keyboardist, synthesist with Pat Metheny. I played on one of his records. I think I contracted a big band horn section for one of his records, Street Dreams or something like that.
Street Dreams.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about Randy Brecker?
Randy Brecker, what can you say? One of the trumpet stylists of all time. A close friend. We played together in a lot of different settings. Wonderful composer, great human being.
How about Chuck Loeb?
All the same, great musician, wonderful guy, composer. I played with him a lot when I was, just starting out around.
How about Nina Freelon?
Great singer. Played on one of her records. Beautiful singer.
Yeah, she's a friend of mine on Facebook. I had to throw that in there. You've already talked about Jaco Pastorius. What about Jimmy Haslip?
Man, great bass player. Great, one of the founders of the Yellow Jackets.
Absolutely.
Super musician. Wonderful guy.
Okay, two more, and then I'll let you go. Billy Cobham.
Great drummer. Played with so many different people, from Horace Silver to the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Great guy. I got to play a little bit with him live and played on one of his records. Wonderful musician. And
then the last one, Brian Bromberg.
Great bass player. Played on one of his records, or maybe more. But
you have, definitely.
Yeah, and composer. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Well done, Kevin. Well, Brian Bromberg, Jimmy Haslip have both appeared separately. They've appeared on our show in the past and they were the most amazing, like yourself. They were just fabulous to talk to and very intriguing. Their life stories are amazing. We started the show playing a track from the album Only in New York from 1994. It's one of your albums with a big band, and we played a track from that. I mean, to be honest with yourself, sir, I could have selected any one of these. They were all incredible. These are all your big band albums. What we're going to do now momentarily, because there may be a few people out there who are going, come on, I'm enjoying the talk, but can we listen to a bit more music? So from an album which you came out with last year, which is a brilliant album, Soundscape, we're going to momentarily just break from the interview and play a track which we thought would be convenient and appropriate. We're going to play a track called The Conversation, because after all, we're having a conversation with yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the wonderful Bob Mintzer, Mr. G, myself, the Jazz Cat. We'll be back momentarily. Have a listen to this, and we'll be straight back with this great interview. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Jazz Across the Pond, Jazz Interviews Reimagined with the Jazz Cat and Mr. G. We've been listening to the conversation featuring our guest, Mr. Bob Mintzer, and the WDR Big Band Cologne from their 2021 project, Soundscapes, which happens to be the number 11 project on Jazz Week's running 26-week jazz chart, which is basically a rolling 6-month chart. Bob, you've appeared on several of my favorite projects, and I'm just going to give some people a little shout out. We've talked about a lot of these artists, but some of my favorite projects you've been on has been Jaco Pastorius' 1981 project, Word of Mouth, Jimmy Haslett's 93 project, Arc, as well as his 2010 project, Nightfall. We mentioned Billy Cobham. You were on his 2010 project, Drum and Voice Volume 3. Arturo Sandoval's 2012 project, Dear Diz, Every Day I Think of You, which is a phenomenal project and a very emotional one for me, hearing Arturo try to sing about Dizzy Gillespie. Peter Horvath's 2015 project, Absolute Reality. Michael Schmidt's 2015 Utopia and his 2017 project, Life. And then Jeff Lorber Fusion's 2015 project, Step It Up, and his 2021 project, Space and Time. And then lastly, Ray Obidio's 2016 project, Latin Jazz Project Volume 1. So your list of credits is amazing, and we've been honored to interview many prolific artists, including Paul Brown, Philippe Sace, Jason Miles, A. Ray Fuller, Jimmy Haslett, Brian Bromberg, and Bob Baldwin, just to mention a few. I think the common denominator, though, across all of you guys is that we've interviewed at least, is that you have an incredible passion for music. You couple that with the ability to compose, arrange, and perform, and the willingness to collaborate and produce, and of course, a desire to educate. So Bob, if you would, reflecting back on your incredible career, what words of advice would you give young, aspiring jazz artists of today?
I think in a general sense, I would say follow your heart, follow your passions, work hard, work on yourself as a human being, not only as an artist, because the way you relate to other people and they relate to you in great part will determine, your activity level and the kind of things you wind up doing. But mainly follow your heart. If you really feel strongly about doing certain things, by all means work on them, and just know that there's not always instant success with anything you do. It took me many years to get to a point where I felt like I was being strictly a creative artist. I mean, I did a lot of freelance work, playing Broadway shows, even before that, playing weddings and bar mitzvahs and, whatever I could to survive and to grow as a musician and as a person. So just keep at it, follow your heart, play the music you hear in your head and feel in your heart, and
Yeah.
just trust your instincts in that regard, and I think you'll be okay.
Well, that is, I mean, that is very interesting because last week we interviewed the wonderful Claire Martin, an English jazz singer, and she was virtually saying parallel with yourself on that. It was all about the perseverance and keep going, and not being able to put up by, anybody saying no, just keep the determination going in that. So absolutely true. In 1990, you joined the Yellow Jackets in Los Angeles. There's an album of the best of the Yellow Jackets featuring a lot of your work on there as well, with a project on the wonderful GRP label, Dave Grusin label, an amazing label. It was called Greenhouse. The Encounter started a 31-year relationship that continues to today. The band has recorded some 16 projects in its time and has had 12 Grammy nominations. Bob, would you please tell our followers more about your introduction to the Yellow Jackets? How did it happen? Who contacted who? And where you went from there, please?
Well, I would start by saying the music scene is sort of operates based on a word of mouth kind of scenario where, somebody is looking for a particular musician to do something, and, so who might be appropriate for this, and sort of there's names swirling around, and somebody says, I know, call so-and-so. So it sort of started there. I mean, I met the Yellow Jackets in, of all places, Aruba. I was playing a gig down there with Michael Franks, and Steve Kahn, the guitar player, was on the band at that time. And the Yellow Jackets were supposed to follow us, but their gear never showed up. So they weren't going to play, so they were just hanging around, and they were there at our set, and they all knew Steve, and Jimmy in particular was friends with Steve Kahn. And so then we all kind of wound up meeting after that concert, and they got to hear me play a little bit. And so then there was a second encounter in Greeley, Colorado, at the University of Northern Colorado, where I was guest soloist with the school big band, and the Yellow Jackets played either before or after us, I don't remember. And again, they got to hear me, we got to meet. And so when Mark Russo, their saxophonist, conveyed that he would be leaving, so the guys started thinking about who might be a good replacement. And I think based on our two encounters, and also I had met Jimmy, we were in LA with the Jaco Pastorius Word of Mouth band, and Jimmy was backstage, and we chatted a little bit. So there was that connection there, plus my background, I guess. And they went, well, let's maybe Bob Mintzer, he's, and I think what might be critical in this whole thing, the way it panned out, was the fact that I play, all the woodwind instruments, the clarinets, flutes, saxophones, and I'm a composer and arranger. So if you think about it, there are and were and always will be many, many great saxophone players out there. But I think in terms of the Yellow Jacket situation, what was called for went considerably further than just playing a saxophone, because the music is very broad and calls for, playing multiple wind instruments, and, and it being that it's a collaborative effort, there's no leader, everyone is also sort of, called upon to write and arrange, produce, and sort of have that level of experience. So that's, I think, why I got the initial call. And then I played on the record, and we went out to Asia and played a month worth of gigs, and it felt pretty good. And I kind of tiptoed into the band, I think a year or two later, sort of expressed an interest in becoming a partner.
Oh, I don't think they had any question about that.
Well, there's a lot involved in being,
there's a lot of the dynamics. Oh yeah.
Particularly being in a band like the Yellow Jackets, where, I think in a band where there's a leader, it's more clear cut. You're working for the leader. The leader sort of makes most of the decisions. You're a side man, right? You're there to serve. Right. Whereas in a collaborative effort like the Yellow Jackets, you're one of four leaders. There's no leader, but you're a participant in a big way, and that really involves a lot more than just the way you play. I mean, man, when we go on tour, we're spending a lot of time together. So it's critical that, that everyone involved has a personality that's conducive to, getting along and being on the team and, drama-free existence.
Well,
And
I
I think
stopped
the key
playing.
thing, I was going to say, I think the key thing is no egos.
Yeah, that's definitely in there.
Well, but I have to say it. I mean, I was listening to the Yellow Jackets from day one. I stopped playing bassoon into my sophomore year at the College of William and Mary, but I had a lot of friends that were music majors, and so people would come to our rooms to see who we were playing. We were always into jazz fusion, all this new stuff that was going on. But I will say, and it's not because we're interviewing you, you can go all the way back to 2011 when I put up my first track, the Yellow Jackets, back when I started the Smooth Jazz Train on Facebook. Bob, in my opinion, while I love the band, when you came on board because of again, you've already alluded to it, a multi-instrumentalist, but your compositions, your impact on the band for me, and I love the Yellow Jackets before Bob Mintzer, but after you joined the band, you took the band to another level, in my humble opinion, and completely changed my perspective of what jazz fusion and how jazz should be evolving. So it was a big day for me when you joined the Yellow Jackets. So I was thrilled with that. Had to throw that in there.
Yeah, well, thank you.
So in 2008, you moved to LA and you accept the Barbara and Buzz McCoy Endowed Chair in Jazz Studies at the University of Southern California's Thornton School of Music. We've already talked about that. But given that how much the music industry has changed over the last 13 years, and of course, jazz, as it should, continues to evolve, how has the curriculum at USC's Thornton School of Music, how has that adapted over the years since you've been there?
Yeah, well, I think, from the period in the 70s when I came up, there's a lot more asked of players. It's not enough just to play an instrument nowadays. You really need to be a composer, an arranger. You need to know a lot about technology, how to record yourself at home, how to make demos, how to, use video. You need to know how to promote yourself on social media. That didn't exist when I was coming up. The record industry has really gotten very skinny in a certain way. There's not all the labels recording new artists the way there once was. A lot of young artists now are putting out their own projects, self-promoting, doing the whole things themselves. That in many cases, pushes them to a place where suddenly they become of interest to a larger record company. That was not happening back then. So
right.
The way the USC Thornton School of Music has adapted specifically is by offering a curriculum that allows students to become well-versed in all those different areas, you need to play and have a repertoire, vocabulary. We really emphasize composition and arranging. We talk about being able to play in a variety of styles. At USC, we have this umbrella department called the Contemporary Music Division, where there are students that are in pop music, technology industry, jazz, and film scoring. So there's a lot of possibilities there for cross-pollination, collaboration. And a lot of our students are coming out of 4 years of schooling with the wherewithal to really make a profound statement because their musicianship is at a certain level, but also they have all the tools to get their music out there and present it.
Amazing. Right. Well, time is ticking away, as it tends to every single week when we interview people, just when we're getting into the crux of it, and suddenly time is ticking away. In 2016, you were asked to be the chief conductor of the WDR Big Band. It's a German radio TV broadcasting station in Cologne in Germany. You currently hold that position, and certainly, I said, there's some amazing albums of yours with the big band, amazing stuff. So very briefly, what do you think working with this incredible WDR, which, I mean, I've got albums of Joe Sample with them, with Larry Colton with them and that. What do you feel that maybe some of your previous work with the likes of Buddy Rich, you were able to bring to the table with the WDR Big Band?
Well, I've had, 40 years of experience in the big band setting as a composer, arranger, instrumentalist, band leader. And that's what I'm bringing to the WDR. The thing that I like most about working with that band is the fact that they're playing together. They have a very full and extensive season. So it's about the closest thing you're going to find to the days of yore, the working, traveling bands like the Buddy Rich band that I was on, where we would play some 320 dates in a year. So these guys are playing together with that kind of regularity. So, you can bring any kind of music to the table there, and they know how to make a sound and how to make it sound really great. And I have a 30-year relationship there. I mean, I started working with that band back in the late 80s. So it's like family, I mean, actually, everything I do at this point, there's sort of three components. It's the Yellow Jackets, the WDR Big Band, and USC. It's like family,
Exactly.
So I'm very comfortable there. And,
regarding your time with the Jackets and WDR, you said, speaking of the Jackets, you said this band has never been one to rest on its laurels. The Yellow Jackets are very adept at reinventing. The four of us are the most adaptable musicians I've ever worked with. Any setting, any style, we know we can do it. As for the WDR, they're one of the best large jazz ensembles in the world, and I knew the two groups would make for a nice marriage. Bob, you could not be more correct. Congratulations on your incredible run with the WDR Big Band Cologne. May you have continued success with the Yellow Jackets, and the best of luck in the 64 Grammy Awards for your nomination for Best Large Jazz Ensemble Album with Jackets XL.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
There it is.
Yeah. And we're going to be finishing the show with a track from that album. First of all, time is ticking away. I've got to say that you once famously said that music provides such an amazing opportunity to bring people of the world together in love, harmony, and spiritually. This universal language transcends and it differentiates between the people and offers the pathway to the highest of thinking and brotherhood. Let us never underestimate the power of music in our lives. I tell you what, I think that says it all. That is an amazing quote, that is, sir.
I agree with that.
You wrote it.
I wrote it.
No wonder it's so darn good.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been watching and listening and talking to the man himself, the wonderful Mr. Bob Mintzer. I could carry on for the next 2 hours talking about this. It is an incredible. We are going to be finishing the track from the amazing album, as we've just spoken about there. It's it's called the Yellow Jackets at XL with the WR Big Band, and we're going to be finishing off with a wonderful track called The Revelation. Kevin, last thing from yourself, sir.
Just wanted to say, well, thank you, Roger, again for another great interview. We're coming to the close of this year. Bob, we just want to say thank you for joining us today. Truly appreciate it, brother.
Pleasure being here. Great talking with you guys, and keep the faith.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jazz Across the Pond. Thank you once again for following us here and there. More great interviews to come up and that. But tonight, it is Mr. Bob Mintzer's show. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Thank you.
From everybody here, take care, look after yourself, stay safe in this crazy world we live in. From everybody, good night.